Marjorie Taylor Greene screams, "You're a communist traitor," at Jasmine, until Jasmine reveals MTG's secret business deals with Chinese spy agencies, her husband's $15 million tax fraud, and the January 6 planning documents with her fingerprints all over them. The House Committee on Oversight and Reform had seen its share of heated political confrontations over the decades, but nothing in the committee's long history had prepared its members, staff, or the viewing public for what was about to unfold on that scorching August afternoon in 2025. The marble-walled chamber, with its imposing columns and formal atmosphere of democratic deliberation, was about to become the stage for the most explosive political destruction ever captured on live television. What had been scheduled as a routine hearing on government accountability was about to transform into a systematic annihilation of one of the most controversial figures in American politics. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene sat at the witness table with her characteristic aggressive posture, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the oppressive Washington heat, her bright red blazer chosen specifically to project defiance and conservative authenticity to her base of supporters. She had requested this hearing herself, demanding what she called the opportunity to expose the real traitors in Congress and to defend real Americans against the communist infiltration of our government. For months, Greene had been escalating her attacks on fellow members of Congress, particularly targeting those who had been investigating what she termed patriotic Americans involved in the January 6th events at the Capitol. But Greene had made a fatal strategic error in demanding this particular platform. By insisting on a public hearing to air her grievances and accusations, she had provided the perfect opportunity for her greatest political nemesis to present evidence that had been gathered through months of painstaking investigation. Across the committee table, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sat with the calm, focused demeanor that had become her trademark in high-stakes political confrontations. Her leather portfolio, worn from years of use but meticulously organized, contained what would soon prove to be the most comprehensive collection of evidence ever assembled against a sitting member of Congress. The contrast between the two women could not have been more stark. Greene radiated barely controlled anger and paranoid energy, her eyes darting around the chamber as if searching for hidden enemies, her hands gesticulating wildly even when she wasn't speaking. She had arrived at the hearing accompanied by what appeared to be private security personnel and carrying multiple phones that she consulted constantly, maintaining communication with what she described as her intelligence network of supporters and informants. Jasmine, by contrast, embodied the kind of methodical professionalism that had made her one of the most feared investigators in Congress. She sat perfectly still, her attention focused entirely on the documents in front of her, occasionally making notes with a pen that moved with surgical precision. She had spent the better part of a year following financial trails, analyzing communication records, and building relationships with sources in law enforcement agencies, intelligence services, and foreign governments. The evidence she had assembled painted a picture of corruption, treason, and criminal conspiracy that extended far beyond anything the American public had been led to believe about Greene's activities. Committee Chairman Jamie Raskin had attempted to maintain some semblance of traditional hearing protocol, but within minutes it became clear that this proceeding would follow no conventional rules of congressional discourse. Greene had immediately launched into what could only be described as a political manifesto, filled with conspiracy theories, personal attacks, and increasingly unhinged accusations against her fellow committee members. Her opening statement had devolved into a rambling denunciation of what she called the deep state communist conspiracy to destroy American patriots, and her attacks had quickly become personal and vicious. The turning point came when Greene fixed her attention on Jasmine with the kind of manic intensity that suggested someone operating far beyond the boundaries of normal political discourse. "You want to know about treason?" Greene had screamed, her voice echoing off the marble walls with an intensity that made several committee members visibly uncomfortable. "You want to know about betraying America? Look at her." She pointed directly at Jasmine with a trembling finger, her face flushed red with what appeared to be genuine rage. "That woman," Greene continued, her voice rising to a near shriek, is a communist traitor who hates everything America stands for. She works for China. She works for the globalists. She works for everyone except the American people. She should be arrested for treason. She should be tried for sedition. And she should be executed for betraying her oath of office. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Even by the degraded standards of contemporary political discourse, Greene's accusations crossed lines that had never been crossed in formal congressional proceedings. Several Republican committee members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, clearly disturbed by the extremity of Greene's language and the personal nature of her attacks. Democratic members looked to Chairman Raskin for guidance on how to proceed in the face of such unprecedented verbal assault. But Jasmine remained perfectly calm throughout Greene's tirade. Her expression unchanged, her posture relaxed. She had been expecting this kind of attack, had been preparing for it, and had developed a strategy specifically designed to use Greene's own extremism against her. When Greene finally paused in her denunciation to catch her breath, Jasmine spoke for the first time since the hearing had begun. "Ms. Greene," she said in a voice so calm, it seemed almost conversational, "I appreciate your passion about American security and your concern about foreign influence in our government. Those are indeed serious issues that deserve careful attention and thorough investigation." Her tone was so reasonable, so measured, that it created an almost surreal contrast with Greene's screaming accusations. The effect was to make Greene appear unhinged and irrational while positioning Jasmine as the adult in the room. "Since you've raised these important topics," Jasmine continued, "perhaps we could examine them in some detail. After all, if we're going to discuss foreign influence, treason, and betrayal of American interests, we should make sure we have all the facts before us." Something in Jasmine's tone made Greene's eyes narrow. The wild energy that had characterized her opening attack seemed to crystallize into something more focused, more dangerous. "What facts?" she demanded. "What are you talking about?" Jasmine opened her portfolio for the first time, withdrawing a thick manila folder marked with what appeared to be federal classification stamps. "I'm talking about these documents," she said simply, holding up the folder so that the cameras could capture its official markings. "Intelligence reports, financial records, and communication intercepts that tell a very interesting story about foreign influence and potential treason." Greene's aggressive posture faltered slightly. "What documents? Where did you get classified materials? That's illegal." "Actually, these documents were declassified and provided to this committee as part of an ongoing federal investigation," Jasmine explained matter-of-factly. "An investigation into foreign influence operations targeting members of Congress, including efforts by hostile foreign intelligence services to recruit and compromise American elected officials." She removed the first document from the folder, holding it up so that the committee and viewing audience could see its official letterhead and classification markings. "This is an intelligence assessment prepared by the CIA's Counterintelligence Division in collaboration with the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force. It details what intelligence analysts describe as an extensive and sophisticated foreign influence operation targeting specific members of the U.S. House of Representatives." Greene tried to interrupt, but Jasmine continued with the methodical precision that had become her trademark in these situations. "According to this assessment, foreign intelligence services have been conducting what they term active measures designed to compromise, manipulate, and control American political figures. These operations have involved financial inducements, business opportunities, and strategic support for political activities that serve foreign rather than American interests." She set the CIA document down and reached for another file. "The intelligence community has identified several American political figures who have been targeted by these operations. Some have been unwitting participants, manipulated without realizing they were being used by foreign intelligence services. Others have been willing participants, actively collaborating with foreign agents in exchange for financial and political benefits." Greene's face had gone pale, but she managed to mount a response. "This is all fake. Deep state lies designed to destroy patriots who threaten their control." "That's an interesting theory," Jasmine replied calmly. which is why I think we should examine the specific evidence rather than relying on theories or speculation. She withdrew what appear to be financial documents and banking records. These are Treasury Department records documenting suspicious financial transactions involving shell companies, offshore accounts, and international wire transfers. The transactions show patterns consistent with money laundering and foreign intelligence funding operations. Jasmine spread the financial documents across her table with the systematic precision of a prosecutor building a case. Between 2020 and 2024, these records show over $47 million in payments from Chinese front companies to American political figures and their associated businesses. The payments were structured to avoid federal reporting requirements and were laundered through multiple offshore jurisdictions to obscure their origin. She held up a specific banking document. This particular transaction shows a $3.2 million payment from a shell company ultimately controlled by China's Ministry of State Security to a Georgia-based consulting firm called American Patriot Strategies. The payment was made in July 2022, just 2 weeks after certain classified defense information was leaked to Chinese intelligence services. Greene was now gripping the edge of the witness table, her knuckles white with tension. I don't know anything about any Chinese payments. I didn't mention your name, Ms. Greene, Jasmine observed mildly. But since you brought it up, perhaps we should discuss your connection to American Patriot Strategies. She reached into her folder and withdrew what appeared to be corporate registration documents. According to Georgia's Secretary of State records, American Patriot Strategies was incorporated in March 2020. The company's registered agent is Perry Greene, and its business address is listed as your family residence in Rome, Georgia. The revelation hit the chamber like a physical blow. Committee members leaned forward in their seats. Staff members stopped their usual bustling to focus on the testimony, and the press gallery erupted in urgent whispered conversations. Perry Greene is your husband, Jasmine continued, consulting the corporate documents. According to these filings, American Patriot Strategies has been used to receive consulting payments, speaking fees, and were described as strategic communications services for various domestic and international clients. Greene tried to mount a defense. My husband's business activities are completely separate from my congressional duties. This is a witch hunt designed to destroy my family. Your family's business activities become relevant when they involve potential violations of federal law, Jasmine replied, particularly when those activities may constitute foreign agent registration violations, money laundering, or espionage. She produced another set of documents, these bearing the seal of the Department of Justice. This is a Foreign Agents Registration Act investigation file documenting the Justice Department's inquiry into unregistered foreign agent activities. The investigation has identified several American individuals and organizations that have been receiving payments from foreign governments while failing to register as required by federal law. Jasmine turned to a specific page in the DOJ file. According to this investigation, American Patriot Strategies received over $8.7 million in payments from Chinese government-controlled entities between 2020 and 2024. None of these payments were reported under FAR requirements, despite the fact that the services provided included political intelligence, legislative analysis, and what Chinese intelligence services described as congressional influence operations. The implications were staggering. If accurate, the document suggested that Greene's family had been receiving millions of dollars from Chinese intelligence services while she served in Congress, potentially creating massive conflicts of interest and possible violations of federal law. But the Chinese payments are only part of the story, Jasmine continued, reaching for another folder. The intelligence community has also documented concerning connections between American political figures and Russian intelligence operations. She withdrew what appeared to be communications intercepts and surveillance reports. These are NSA intercepts of communications between Russian intelligence operatives and their American contacts. The intercepts show detailed discussions of what Russian services call useful idiots, American political figures who can be manipulated to serve Russian interests without necessarily realizing they're being used. Greene's breathing had become rapid and shallow, but she managed to respond. Russia, China. It's always the same lies. You people blame every patriot for foreign interference. Actually, these intercepts include specific references to American political figures by name, Jasmine replied, including discussions of how certain members of Congress could be influenced to take positions that serve Russian strategic interests. She consulted the NSA documents. In this particular intercept from March 2023, Russian intelligence officers discuss what they describe as our asset in the Georgia delegation. They reference someone they call the blonde American who has been very cooperative in advancing our narratives about Ukrainian corruption and NATO expansion. The description was clearly meant to identify Greene, though Jasmine didn't explicitly make the connection. The Russian operatives discussed providing this asset with talking points, funding, and strategic support for activities that serve Russian rather than American interests. They specifically mentioned providing information designed to undermine American support for Ukraine and to promote conspiracy theories that benefit Russian propaganda efforts. Greene was now visibly trembling, but her response was predictably aggressive. That's fake. Russian disinformation designed to frame patriots. You're the one working for foreign governments. That's certainly a possibility we should consider, Jasmine agreed, which is why I think we should examine all the available evidence before drawing conclusions. She reached for what appeared to be travel records and passport documents. These are State Department records documenting international travel by members of Congress and their families. The records show some interesting patterns that correlate with the financial and intelligence documents we've been discussing. Jasmine consulted the travel records. According to these documents, between 2020 and 2024, members of your family made 17 trips to countries that intelligence analysts consider high risk for foreign intelligence recruitment operations. These trips include multiple visits to Russia, China, Hungary, and several Middle Eastern countries known for their intelligence activities. She held up specific travel documents. This passport record shows that Perry Greene traveled to Moscow in September 2022, just 3 weeks before American Patriot Strategies received a $2.1 million payment from a Russian-controlled shell company. The purpose of travel was listed as business consultation, but Russian intelligence intercepts suggest the trip involved what they described as operational planning meetings. The evidence was becoming overwhelming, but Jasmine wasn't finished building her case. The travel records also show that you yourself made several unreported trips to countries where American intelligence agencies documented active recruitment efforts targeting U.S. political figures. She produced what appeared to be airline records and hotel receipts. In August 2023, you traveled to Budapest for what was publicly described as a fact-finding mission about European politics. However, Hungarian intelligence services reported that during your visit, you met with known Russian intelligence operatives who were conducting what they described as influence operations against American political targets. Greene's attempts at denial were becoming increasingly frantic. I never met with any Russian agents. This is all fabricated evidence designed to frame me. The evidence suggests otherwise, Jasmine replied, producing what appeared to be surveillance photographs. These photographs were taken by Hungarian intelligence services and shared with American agencies as part of intelligence cooperation agreements. They show you meeting with Viktor Kosmin, a known Russian intelligence officer, at the Four Seasons Hotel in Budapest. The photographs were clear and unmistakable, showing Greene in what appeared to be a private meeting with a man who matched the description of a Russian intelligence operative. According to intelligence reports, this meeting lasted over 3 hours and involved discussions of what Kosmin described as enhanced cooperation between Russian interests and sympathetic American political figures. The meeting was followed by a wire transfer of $1.7 million to American Patriot Strategies just 5 days later. But the international intelligence connections were only part of the evidence that Jasmine had assembled. The most damaging revelations concerned Greene's domestic activities and her potential involvement in criminal conspiracies within the United States. Ms. Greene, Jasmine said, her tone taking on a more serious quality. Your husband's tax problems represent another area of concern that this committee needs to address. She withdrew what appeared to be IRS documents and federal tax records. According to Internal Revenue Service investigations, Perry Greene and American Patriot Strategies have been the subject of a comprehensive tax fraud investigation since early 2023. The investigation has documented systematic underreporting of income, fraudulent deductions, and the use of offshore accounts to hide taxable revenue. Greene's response was immediate and desperate. Tax disputes are civil matters. Everyone has disagreements with the IRS. Actually, this goes far beyond civil tax disputes, Jasmine corrected. The IRS investigation has been referred to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution. The case involves what federal prosecutors describe as one of the most sophisticated tax fraud schemes ever discovered involving a political family. She consulted the IRS documents. According to these records, your husband failed to report over $15.3 million in income received through American Patriot Strategies between 2020 and 2024. The unreported income includes the Chinese and Russian payments we discussed earlier, but also substantial payments from domestic sources that were concealed through shell companies and offshore accounts. The tax fraud allegations were serious enough on their own, but they also provided federal prosecutors with leverage to investigate other potential crimes. The Justice Department investigation has also uncovered evidence of money laundering, wire fraud, and conspiracy charges related to the concealment of this income. Federal prosecutors estimate that your family owes over $4.8 million in back taxes, penalties, and interest. But even the tax fraud charges paled in comparison to the most serious allegations that Jasmine was prepared to present. However, the most concerning evidence relates to potential domestic terrorism and seditious conspiracy charges, she announced, reaching for what appear to be FBI case files. These are FBI investigative documents related to the January 6th attack on the Capitol and ongoing investigations into domestic terrorist activities. The documents contain evidence that has not been previously made public, but has been provided to this committee as part of our oversight responsibilities. Greene's face had gone completely white. January 6th was a peaceful protest, patriots exercising their constitutional rights. The FBI evidence suggests a very different picture, Jasmine replied, consulting the federal case files. According to these documents, federal investigators have identified what they describe as a sophisticated conspiracy to prevent the peaceful transfer of power through violence and intimidation. The conspiracy involved coordination between elected officials, extremist groups, and foreign intelligence services. She held up what appeared to be communication records and planning documents. These are encrypted communications recovered from devices seized during federal raids on extremist group members. The communications show detailed planning for what participants described as a revolution to save America from communist takeover. Jasmine began reading from the communications records. In this message dated December 15, 2020, one participant writes, MTG says we need to be ready for anything on January 6th. She's working with us on the inside to make sure we have access to the building and know where to find the targets. The implication was clear and devastating. The communications suggested that Greene had been directly involved in planning the January 6th attack. Another message from December 28th reads, Marjorie confirmed that she'll create the distraction we need during the certification process. When she objects, that's our signal to move. She'll make sure the security doors are unlocked. Greene was now hyperventilating, her carefully maintained political persona completely shattered. Those messages are fake. Deep state fabrications. I never communicated with any extremist groups. The FBI forensics analysis suggests otherwise, Jasmine replied. Digital evidence recovered from your personal devices shows that you were in direct communication with leaders of several extremist organizations in the weeks leading up to January 6th. She produced what appear to be smartphone data and digital forensics reports. According to FBI technical analysis, your personal phone exchanged over 300 messages with known domestic terrorists between December 2020 and January 2021. The messages include discussions of weapons, tactical planning, and specific targets within the Capitol building. The digital evidence was supported by physical evidence that was even more damaging. Federal investigators also recovered planning documents that bear your fingerprints and handwriting. These documents include floor plans of the Capitol building with specific offices and escape routes marked, lists of Democratic members of Congress with their locations and security details, and tactical plans for what participants described as citizen arrests of traitors. Jasmine held up photocopies of handwritten documents that appeared to show detailed planning for the Capitol attack. This document, recovered from the home of Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio, contains your handwriting and fingerprints. It shows a detailed plan for neutralizing specific members of Congress, including Speaker Pelosi, Congressman Schiff, and other Democratic leaders. The evidence was overwhelming and terrifying. Greene hadn't just been a passive supporter of the January 6th events. She had been an active participant in planning what amounted to a domestic terrorist attack. The document also includes your signature on what participants called the Oath of American Patriots, a pledge to use all necessary means, including violence, to prevent the communist takeover of America. But even these domestic terrorism allegations were not the most serious charges that Jasmine was prepared to present. However, the gravest allegations concern national security crimes and potential treason, she announced, reaching for what appear to be classified intelligence documents. These are intelligence assessments documenting your potential involvement in espionage activities and the unauthorized disclosure of classified information to foreign intelligence services. Greene tried to stand up from the witness table, but her legs were too unsteady to support her weight. "This is treason," she shrieked. "You're the traitor. You're trying to destroy America." The evidence suggests that you may have provided classified national security information to Chinese and Russian intelligence services. Jasmine continued methodically. Information that you obtained through your position on the House Committee on Homeland Security. She consulted the intelligence documents. According to CIA counterintelligence assessments, classified information about American defense capabilities, troop movements, and intelligence operations was systematically leaked to hostile foreign intelligence services between 2021 and 2024. The pattern of leaks corresponds directly with your committee assignments and access to classified briefings. The allegations of espionage were supported by specific evidence of unauthorized disclosures. In March 2023, you attended a classified briefing about American military capabilities in the Pacific region. Within 48 hours, Chinese intelligence services had detailed information about American submarine deployments, aircraft carrier positions, and planned military exercises. Jasmine produced what appeared to be intelligence intercepts and communication analysis. NSA intercepts show Chinese intelligence officers discussing information that could only have come from that classified briefing. They specifically referenced details that were provided to only 12 members of Congress, including you. The pattern of leaks had continued with increasing frequency and severity. In August 2023, you received classified information about American intelligence operations in Eastern Europe. Within 1 week, Russian intelligence services had compromised 3 American intelligence assets, resulting in their capture and execution by Russian authorities. The human cost of Greene's alleged betrayals was staggering and tragic. Federal investigators believe that your unauthorized disclosures of classified information have resulted in the deaths of at least 7 American intelligence operatives and the compromise of dozens of ongoing national security operations. But the most damaging evidence concerned Greene's potential role in planning future domestic terrorist attacks. Current FBI investigations have identified ongoing plots by domestic terrorist groups to attack government facilities, assassinate political leaders, and overthrow what they describe as the illegitimate communist government, Jasmine revealed. According to confidential informants within these groups, you have been actively involved in planning what participants call Phase 2 of the American Revolution, a coordinated campaign of domestic terrorism designed to trigger a civil war. The allegations included specific plans for future attacks that were both detailed and terrifying. FBI surveillance has documented meetings where you discussed plans to bomb federal buildings, assassinate Supreme Court justices, and coordinate simultaneous attacks on state capitals across the country. Greene was now completely incoherent, alternating between screaming denials and making threats against other committee members. The FBI evidence includes audio recordings of you discussing specific targets, weapons procurement, and tactical coordination with domestic terrorist cells across multiple states. Jasmine produced what appeared to be transcripts of recorded conversations. In this recording from May 2024, you can be heard saying, "We need to be ready to take out the whole corrupt system. Courts, Congress, the deep state, all of it has to go. American patriots are ready to do whatever it takes." The recordings included discussions of weapons, explosives, and assassination plans that went far beyond anything that could be characterized as protected political speech. Another recording from July 2024 captures you discussing plans to eliminate the communist traitors during the 2024 election period. You specifically mention creating maximum chaos to prevent what you call the final communist takeover of America. But perhaps the most shocking revelation concerned Greene's connection to international terrorist organizations. Intelligence assessments have also identified potential connections between your domestic terrorist network and international terrorist organizations, Jasmine announced. According to classified intelligence reports, your extremist network has been in communication with foreign terrorist groups, including Russian-backed militias, Middle Eastern terror organizations, and white supremacist networks in Europe. The international connections suggested a level of coordination and sophistication that elevated Greene's activities from domestic extremism to international terrorism. Intercepted communications show discussions of weapons transfers, funding arrangements, and coordinated attack planning between your domestic network and foreign terrorist organizations. The evidence painted a picture of Greene as not just a domestic extremist, but as a key figure in an international network of terrorist organizations working to destabilize democratic governments. NSA intercepts show Russian intelligence officers referring to you as our most valuable American asset and discussing plans to use your network for what they describe as accelerated destabilization operations against the United States. The full scope of Greene's alleged criminal activities was staggering in its breadth and severity. Federal prosecutors are currently preparing what they describe as the most comprehensive terrorism and espionage case in American history, Jasmine revealed. The charges under consideration include treason, espionage, domestic terrorism, conspiracy to overthrow the government, and material support for foreign terrorist organizations. Greene was no longer capable of responding coherently to the allegations. She sat slumped in her chair, alternately sobbing and muttering incoherent conspiracy theories. The evidence we've reviewed today represents just a fraction of what federal investigators have assembled, Jasmine concluded. The full scope of the criminal activities, the foreign intelligence connections, and the domestic terrorism planning is still being investigated by multiple federal agencies. She began organizing her documents with calm efficiency. But what we've seen today makes clear that this is not about political differences or policy disagreements. This is about criminal activity, betrayal of oath of office, and potential treason against the United States of America. The chamber had fallen into stunned silence. Even the Republican committee members who had been prepared to defend Greene sat speechless, their prepared talking points rendered meaningless by the overwhelming evidence of her criminal activities. Chairman Raskin finally found his voice. "Ms. Greene, do you have any response to these serious allegations?" Greene looked up with wild, unfocused eyes, her carefully constructed political image completely destroyed. "They're all lies," she whispered. "Communist lies designed to destroy American patriots." But her denial was too weak, too disconnected from reality to carry any conviction. "I think we've heard enough for today," Chairman Raskin announced. "This hearing is adjourned pending further investigation by appropriate federal authorities." As the gavel fell, federal agents who had been waiting outside the chamber entered to execute arrest warrants that had been sealed pending the conclusion of Greene's testimony. The woman who had screamed "communist traitor" Jasmine Crockett was now being arrested on charges that could send her to federal prison for the rest of her life. But Greene's arrest was only the beginning of what federal prosecutors expected to be the largest domestic terrorism and espionage investigation in American history. Within hours of Greene's arrest, federal agents were executing search warrants and making arrests across multiple states as the full extent of the domestic terrorist network was revealed. The investigation expanded to include dozens of co-conspirators, multiple foreign intelligence services, and what prosecutors described as a comprehensive conspiracy to overthrow the American government through terrorism and violence. Perry Greene was arrested at the family's Georgia residence on charges of tax fraud, money laundering, and acting as an unregistered foreign agent. The $15 million in unreported income was just the beginning of what investigators discovered about the family's criminal financial activities. Bank records revealed additional offshore accounts containing over $30 million in payments from foreign intelligence services, domestic terrorist organizations, and international criminal syndicates. The Chinese intelligence connections proved to be even more extensive than initially revealed, with evidence showing that Greene had been providing classified information to Chinese military intelligence for over 3 years. The intelligence leaks had compromised American military operations across the Pacific region and had contributed to increased Chinese aggression against American allies in the region. Russian intelligence connections were equally damaging, with evidence showing that Greene had been actively working to undermine American support for Ukraine and NATO while providing intelligence about American military capabilities to Russian intelligence services. The domestic terrorism charges were supported by evidence of active participation in planning attacks against federal facilities, assassination plots against government officials, and efforts to coordinate a nationwide campaign of violence designed to trigger a civil war. Federal prosecutors announced that they would be seeking the death penalty for the most serious charges, including treason and domestic terrorism, resulting in loss of life. The international implications of Greene's arrest reverberated through intelligence communities worldwide, as allied nations assessed the potential damage to shared intelligence operations and international security cooperation. NATO announced a comprehensive review of intelligence sharing protocols, while several allied nations requested briefings on potentially compromised operations and intelligence assets. The Chinese and Russian intelligence connections raised questions about the extent of foreign infiltration of the American political system and prompted calls for enhanced security screening of elected officials. For Jasmine Crockett, Greene's arrest represented another milestone in her growing reputation as America's most effective anti-corruption investigator. But Jasmine remained focused on the broader implications of the investigation rather than personal vindication. This case demonstrates the extent to which foreign intelligence services and domestic terrorist organizations have infiltrated our political system, she told reporters following Greene's arrest. We can't allow the extremism and criminal activity we've uncovered to be normalized or dismissed as political differences. This is about protecting American democracy from those who would destroy it from within. The investigation also highlighted the importance of congressional oversight and the need for enhanced security measures to protect classified information and prevent foreign intelligence penetration of government institutions. Ethics experts called for comprehensive reforms to prevent future infiltration of Congress by foreign intelligence services and domestic terrorist organizations. The full scope of the criminal conspiracy was still being investigated, but early estimates suggested that it involved hundreds of participants across multiple states and several foreign countries. Federal prosecutors predicted that the investigation would take years to complete and would result in dozens of additional arrests and prosecutions. The case against Greene herself was expected to go to trial within 18 months, with prosecutors expressing confidence that they had overwhelming evidence to secure convictions on all charges. Legal experts noted that the combination of financial crimes, espionage charges, and domestic terrorism allegations made this one of the most serious criminal cases ever brought against a sitting member of Congress. The political implications were equally significant, with Greene's arrest raising questions about the vetting and oversight of elected officials and the need for enhanced security measures to protect against foreign intelligence infiltration. Congressional leaders announced plans for comprehensive hearings into how Greene's criminal activities had gone undetected for so long and what institutional reforms might be necessary to prevent similar cases in the future. The case also highlighted the effectiveness of congressional oversight in exposing high-level corruption and criminal activity, with Jasmine's investigation serving as a model for future anti-corruption efforts. But perhaps most importantly, Greene's downfall demonstrated that no elected official, regardless of their political connections or extremist support base, was above the law. The woman who had built her political career on conspiracy theories, extremist rhetoric, and attacks on democratic institutions had learned that her own criminal activities would ultimately be exposed and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Her threat to destroy Jasmine Crockett as a communist traitor had instead provided the perfect platform for the exposure of her own treason, terrorism, and betrayal of the American people. As Greene was led away in handcuffs, facing the possibility of life in prison or even execution for her crimes against America, the irony of her situation was not lost on observers. The real traitor had been the woman screaming about traitors. The real terrorist had been the woman claiming to fight terrorism, and the real enemy of America had been the woman wrapping herself in the flag while selling out her country to foreign intelligence services. Justice had prevailed, but the damage to American democracy and national security would take years to fully assess and repair. The investigation continued, the prosecutions proceeded, and the work of holding powerful criminals accountable for their actions carried on. But America had learned an important lesson about the price of allowing extremism and criminal activity to masquerade as patriotism, and about the courage required to expose the truth even when it threatened the most powerful and dangerous figures in American politics. The real patriots were the investigators who exposed the criminals, not the criminals who wrapped themselves in patriotic rhetoric while betraying everything America stood for. And in the end, the truth had prevailed over conspiracy theories. Evidence had defeated extremism, and justice had triumphed over those who sought to destroy democracy from within. The hearing was over, but the reckoning had just begun, and America was stronger for having confronted and defeated those who sought to destroy it from within.